Awesome. Okay, so let's get started. I'm Kelly. I get to walk you through this training. And for those of you who do not know me, I've been a BNI member for, oh my gosh, 11 years. I've been a trainer with BNI for, I think, about 6 now. And I have been teaching and living and breathing what we're going to go through today for 13 years. Probably longer, because my profession before that was financial advising and development officer. So people skills has been my life, I feel like. I'm a business coach now, so I'm using all of these things that we're going to talk about today, not only in growing my business, but in working with clients and teaching my clients to do with their teams, their employees. So there's a lot of different applications for what we're going to go through today. And so if there's anything specific that you would like to go a little deeper into, just raise your hand, flag me down, we'll go into it. Again, my preference are smaller groups, and that's what we get to have today. So, so ask away as we work through the material. Sound fair? Sound good? All right. So I would love to hear from a couple of people. Why are you here? Why are you carving out 90 minutes on a Monday? Which, thank you for agreeing for Monday. It's hard to find a day or a time when there is not a BNI meeting. Now that we have so many chapters, Mondays seem to be the days. So somebody raise your hand, wave at me. Share with me what you would like to get out of today.
Kelly, did you get my email?
I did, yes.
Okay, so maybe you want others to share versus me?
Absolutely. And if none of them raise their hand, then you go right ahead. I could call on people who did not email me. Maybe that's what I'll do. Let's see, who did I hear from? Who haven't I heard from? How about Audra? Will you unmute and tell us? Oh, Dan, you might be the man. Did Audra step away? Uh-oh, you're muted. You're muted, Dan. I can't hear you.
Eventually, I'll figure this out.
There we go. Why are you and
Audra had to step
joining
out.
us?
But what are we trying to get out of it? That's a good question. Just learning what people are after, how to talk to them, how to figure people out, I guess.
It never hurts to learn more. I'm still learning on a daily basis. Absolutely. Okay. Shauna, are you willing to unmute yourself and share with us what you would like to get out of, or what prompted you to say yes to coming today? And I think I said your name right. Shauna, she's muted. So we'll see if she is able to unmute. She may have stepped away like Audra did. Okay, let's go to Christina. Are you there? Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Dan. I just always looking for tips and pointers, and especially as the workforce is changing so much, it's what works 5 years ago isn't going to work today. So just making sure that I'm not being left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So I have the others. And so let's just jump into the material. I am going to share a slideshow with you, but I think that it will be valuable from the standpoint of giving you some examples. And so let me go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully I do this correctly. And hey, can you all see that slideshow? Awesome. Okay, fantastic. All right, so when it comes to people skills, probably depending on who you talk to, they will give a different definition. However, when it comes to success, the Carnegie Institute did a research project a while ago, and this is what they found, is that 85% of success was due to people skills, and only 15% is due to technical skills. Now, when we even look at the workforce today, so many people are wanting to hire more for attitude and fit with their team rather than somebody who is extremely proficient at the job. In fact, I just had a situation where a client hired someone who was extremely proficient at the job, but was an absolute train wreck when working with other people. And within, I think, 7 weeks, they started the job and then they left the job. And now they are revamping, of course, what they're hiring for, because they've identified, they disagreed with me and they went with the person who was very technical. And now they're recognizing they need to incorporate a little bit of that, that team building type of a person and that attitude, because this plays out over and over and over again. People who are very skilled with their people skills also do much better when it comes to their sales success. Let's see. All right. So a lack of people skills result in this. I just gave you that example of the person, the turnover that was created because they did not have the people skills, but it directly impacts your bottom line. If you're looking at whether it's the sales or the retention of staff, it all costs money if you are not up to speed and not practicing your people skills on a regular basis. However, on the flip side, which is why we're doing this workshop, and why even I continue to work on my people skills, everything increases. The things that you want to increase will increase. Your profits are higher, your customer satisfaction scores are higher, which all of us are looking for ways to get reviews or testimonials, whether they're online or not. Productivity is higher. The top people, when you're able to really connect with your top teammates, you're going to notice that they put in 20% more effort than those who are just, the average or the mediocre. And while we all want teams of highly effective people, the truth of the matter is that some of them are just more effective than others. So if we're able to connect with those who are especially at that top tier with our employee base, then you're going to even get more effort out of them. All right, so it begins and ends with you from my perspective. All right, so here's where we're going to go through, and I'm going to do my best to bring in some of the questions or some of the emails that I received. So thank you for sending those to me. When it comes to people skills, a couple of you already identified in the emails to me that it definitely needs to take into consideration the personality type, what is their style, and there's a lot of different ways to learn that. So we are going to go into that a little bit more. I use the DISC assessment. It's behavioral based. It's very easy to understand, but the main reason that I went into it is because of the person who was giving the training. It was very implementation based. It was not with a sales focus or not with a focus of, here, just go get a corporate client to pay you a lot of money to run DISC assessments on everybody. You do it and then you walk away and there's no impact. We all know ourselves. The real gold in any of those personality or behavioral type of assessments is the implementation and the application to other people. So that's what we'll focus on today, but it really begins and ends with you. And I call this a self-awareness spectrum, because even when you take an assessment or even when you reflect on your own self, like I mentioned, I just went through a conference this weekend. There's a lot of reflection now that has to go into it, from not just the knowledge that was learned, but what about my interaction with the other participants? And those are the kinds of things that I have trained myself to think about and to reflect on to see, was I really showing up for them, or was I making it more about myself? Was I wanting to get feedback from me and not truly connecting it? And I think that's where it all begins, is having this journey of self-awareness. And some of us are a little further along the spectrum, while others don't even know that they need to be self-aware. They're just living their days, going about everything. And what I see happen a lot is the people who have some level of self-awareness attempt to get those who don't to be self-aware. And that's a big mistake right there. So this is all about you. You cannot create someone else to be self-aware. If you're attempting to do that with anyone, stop now, work on yourself. What is it about you that you need to get them to be aware? And ultimately it comes down to, they need to change something that they're doing in order for my life to be better. Stop that right away. If that's what you're trying to do, you need to meet them where they're at and leave them be. And then if you want to develop the self-awareness, find the person who is coming to you saying, I want to grow in this area. Will you help me? That's the person who you can help, because it really is all about you. And the more self-aware you are on your behaviors, how you prefer to communicate, what energy you bring to the table, what role you're playing, what your responsibilities are, and you take radical responsibility around all of that, then your life, your people skills will improve from there. When you're trying to change everyone else to make you better with people, then you're missing the boat. And so it begins and ends with you. Then once you start to have that self-awareness for yourself, you can start to observe and understand the people around you. And it really is an observation. It's an exercise in observation, not in telling them how they need to be, but observing what is their energy, what are their preferences, and then again, meeting them where they're at. And I have the platinum rule written down here because we grew up learning the golden rule. The golden rule is treat others the way you want to be treated. This works really well for preschoolers and kindergartens and gardeners and even my third grader. Well, honey, do you want them to chase you around the playground all day? And then when they get close enough, they grab the back of your hoodie and it yanks you? No, well then don't do it to other people, right? So the golden rule has a place in life, but eventually we get to a point where we want others to see us for who we are. Would you agree with that? That's where the platinum rule comes in. We want people to see us and accept us for who we are and what we bring to the table. The platinum rule is simply applying that to them, giving them that same opportunity. It is treating them the way they want to be treated. And it starts by observing them, not judging, and then trying to understand at least where they're coming from, which leads to acceptance. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to agree with everything that they do, but it works for them. And so be it. Let it work for them. Apply that platinum rule. When it comes to people skills and really being able to connect with other people, so much of that is about just observing them and letting them be, and not judging them for how they're showing up. This is what we all want for ourselves as well. So when you are able to give it to someone else, your ability to get further in that conversation with them, in whatever relationship it is, will only get better and better and better. Number 3, own your stuff. This I learned from one of my past clients. She was a landscaper. She was a fiery little Italian. And one of the things that she preached, not only to her children, but to her team, all of her employees, was own your stuff. She used a different word than stuff, but I didn't want to necessarily throw out a lot of adult language during this. And that was exactly how she lived. Now, when you are working to develop relationships and increase or improve your people skills, when you can own when you let something fall through the cracks, when you walked in the room and instead of recognizing what's going on and just barged in and started barking orders, which happens regularly with people you're really familiar with in some cases because you're in a hurry, and you walk in and you simply say, hey, did you get that call made? Hey, did you get, hey. They're looking at you like, oh my gosh, now we're all human, so this happens. But if you're able to pause, if you catch yourself, and this goes back to the self-awareness spectrum, if you catch yourself in the midst of that, you can stop and you can hit pause and you can even laugh and say, I'm so sorry. How about we hit the reset button and I say, hello, how are you? Looks like you're busy. When you get a chance, could you check in with me about something? Or you could say, I'm sorry for interrupting. Own it immediately, as soon as you recognize it. If it's not in the moment, if it's something later that you recognize, wow, I was like a bull in a china shop, I should probably go back and at least let them know, I get that I was a bull in a china shop. Sorry about that. I'm going to do my best to walk in more patiently next time. People will, the rapport and the credibility that you will build in those relationships will increase dramatically. And when you're able to remember it for next time, to catch yourself before you do that thing again, they will appreciate the effort you're putting in. So own your stuff. And as soon as you catch on that you've done something, don't blame anyone else. Take the ownership and go back to them and make it right. Number 4, building up or breaking down every interaction that you have with another person, whether it's on the phone, whether it's in person, you are either building up or breaking down your ability to communicate with them. And a lot of things go into this: your kindness, your tone. Are you appreciating them? Do you have collaborative communication? A lot of other things go into this. And yet, when you can remember that every interaction that you have is either going to build up the relationship or break it down, then it gives you, again, a different level of awareness on applying some of these things that we're going to get into, because there are some very specific strategies when it comes to people skills that you can use to get that person to that next level in order to take the relationship from the surface to a more connected place. There are definitely some specific things that you can do, but if you are not starting here with these things that are on the screen, you will never have the opportunity. You will always remain not just at a surface level, but in some cases, people become skeptical or they become kind of tired by your approach. And then they don't want to give you the opportunity to build that relationship. So before we move on, would love to either hear questions or feedback from you on what really stands out to you when you look at what's on the screen. You all look very thoughtful. Do you want me?
I resemble these remarks.
You resemble them?
Most of them.
Yeah. Does anyone else, does it resonate? Just a show of hands. Does it resonate with you, some of these things? Because it sure does for me. It absolutely does for me. And I have even seen it in the BNI meeting from myself. When I am rushed, when I am hurried, it's all about me. I don't have time for anybody else. And I am not proud to say that, but you know what? It's reality sometimes. And it's a good reminder to walk in and recognize, make it about them, get my own stuff taken care of before I walk in that room, right? So when you are able to have a focus on all of these, then it allows you to, let's see, build rapport. And this is something where I would love to see you write in the chat box. What does rapport look like to you? Or how do you build rapport? How do you define this word? And just add it into the chat box. Because again, we can skip to the how-to, we can skip to how do I talk to different styles. But if you do not have rapport with any of them, you will never successfully use any of the strategies for communication. Connection, trust, reliability, consistency, listening and asking questions. Jill, go a little further with building relationships. How does a person, or how do you specifically go about building relationships? Alignment and development of trust, a basic understanding of one another. These are all really good. These are all really good. Do you find building rapport to be easy? No. Sometimes it's a no-brainer because you just connect with the other person. There's no thought that has to go into it, right? You're just peas in a pod. They speak your language. Boy, those are the easy ones. And then there's all these other people. And we're going to focus on all those other people because the ones that you just jive with, God, those are so easy and it feels so comfortable and you're at ease with each other. Those are the easy ones. And then building and deepening those relationships are often less challenging, right? Spending time with them to gain the things mentioned. Okay, thank you for clarifying, Jill. Absolutely. Okay, so building rapport. This is definitely like a huge foundational piece to then developing the relationships and applying the people skills that we're going to go through. And so I hope that all of you still have this chat box opened up a little bit. I'm going to see if I can expand mine actually. Are you seeing it on my screen since I'm doing screen share or no? No? Okay. I didn't know if that worked that way or not. Okay. So let me ask, so here's the next thing that I want to ask when it comes to the rapport and building that rapport. When it is not with someone who you instantly click with, when it is someone who is a little bit more of a challenge or a little different than you, who you don't automatically understand where they're coming from, what is the most challenging piece to that? What's the most challenging piece to building rapport or building on the relationship with someone who is not clicking with you or that you are not clicking with?
Do you want this in the chat?
In the chat, please. Kaylina, gosh, I'm so surprised to see that from you. Oh, giving
Talk all I want. It's getting them to talk back.
that's right. Sorry, Sorry, I'm still here. I'm just grabbing some notes because I was thinking through this before we got on here. Step out of your paradigm and learn about theirs. That can be a challenge. What else? What else? What else? What is the biggest challenge? Respect and shared values. If we don't have them, how do we build them? Good question. Very good question. All right, so these are some of the challenges. Very good. What about, what do you think goes into, it's harder to relate and know what to ask them without going down a rabbit hole? Okay. When it comes to, where is my mouse? My mouse is being all wonky. I don't know why. Wonky is a technical term, by the way. There it is. Okay, so when the first things that you put in, what does it take to build rapport? What do you think are some of the actual behaviors or things that you can do or be aware of in order to spend that time with them, to build that rapport, to focus on when you have somebody that you are not necessarily seeing eye to eye with? I'll give you a head start and then see if there's any that you would add to this list. Whether it's in person or by phone, your energy that you come to the conversation with is a huge thing. If you come into a conversation with almost anything besides an open, positive energy, you're shutting down the communication rather than opening the door to understand them or to deepen that relationship. So check your energy before you step into that relationship or that conversation. Of course, your tone. Do as much as you can to be present. And this is a challenge for all of us because we have, not only is the world going really fast, but when you are intentionally wanting to build a relationship with someone, it needs to be something you focus on. You must have presence about you, and that, I'm trying to get to the chat. I do not know what is going on with this, but let's see if I can go back because I'm giving you all the goods. Yeah, acknowledging strengths. So when it comes to being present, that's really Jedi mind tricks for yourself. Getting whatever you need to off your plate so that you can build that rapport with the person. So if that means scheduling a 5-minute chunk before you start a meeting, if that means making sure that your kids are taken care of or a client is taken care of before you step into that conversation, do everything that you possibly can. Now, what happens when you have multiple things going on at once and you're not able to? Set up some kind of process for reminding yourself. And so I will see a lot of people who will talk about this and they'll put a Post-it note on their phone or they'll put a Post-it note on their computer. Be present. It's just a quick visual reminder before they pick up that phone from the customer. Be present. So they will put in a lot of different things so that they can build up rather than break down. Because we've all been on the receiving end of talking to someone who is not present. Haven't we? I know I certainly have. And they're spaced off or they're looking at their phone, or you can just tell that they have 20 things going through their head instead of whatever it is that I'm saying. Has anyone else been on that receiving end? Do your best not to be the one giving that. So there's the energy, there's the tone, there's the presence. Somebody already mentioned listening. And then here's another good one. And this was actually in one of the questions, is about sharing having the opportunity to share our perspective, to share our opinions. Most people don't want us to lead with that. However, if we are interested in them, then most often they will reciprocate and they will be interested in us. And again, if you are giving them the ability and wanting to understand where they are coming from and what do they think about things, then in some cases, this will never happen because they have zero self-awareness. And then you get to, then you can, that's a whole other conversation. But then it is a person who will say, well, what do you think about it? And some of the best ways to be interested in another person, rather than being the one who is interesting, which means we talk about our own stuff, to be interested is, especially Kaylina, you got to give me something to work with, right? And then I'm off and running. I can talk to anybody. I'm the same way, but if they are not a talker, here is one of the best strategies or the best tactics to get a person to start to share a little bit and for you to start to build that rapport by being interested in them, even if you don't have any shared anything. I learned this when I was building a financial advising business, and I was going door to door to door to door with in residential areas as well as in businesses. And when I started to approach a conversation in this way with a brand new cold lead, I had never seen them, they had never seen me. It started open doors because it started the conversation. And all I would lead with was, I would do a quick introduction. And then I would say, you know what, I'm just out trying to gather information from people. And I'm just curious, which one of these would you say is the most pressing challenge for you right now? Is it retirement? Is it saving for your kids' education? Or is it just starting to save in general? Or is there something else? And I did occasionally have the person just shake their head and shut the door. However, the majority of people would engage and they would say, retirement. Oh, well, tell me more about what retirement looks like to you. And I was giving them the ability, without asking and drilling a lot of questions into them, to share what they wanted to share. And then I could acknowledge them and meet them where they were at. Oh, so it sounds like it's really important to do a lot of traveling in retirement. Where would you like to go? Oh, Fiji. I've never been. Tell me about it. And as they started to talk about the things they were interested in, it eventually, after multiple conversations, wouldn't happen right away, they would get to the point of asking me, well, what do you think? Is that something you could help us with? Absolutely. So that was how it would happen. Again, not all the time, but it was working for 4 years, and then life changed and my husband went active duty and we moved to Terre Haute, Indiana, which is why I have an 812 number for those of you who know my number. And I had a 3-week-old baby. So life changed dramatically. A brick and mortar financial advising business was no longer ideal. So that's what happened. That's why I'm not still in that field for one of the reasons. But can you see where starting a conversation with a quick intro about me and then switching it almost immediately to them can make sense when it comes to building rapport? Or do you think I'm completely off my rocker and you're going to say that won't ever work? What are your thoughts? Either type them in the chat or unmute yourself, because this is one of the key ways to build credibility and build rapport with people, is by asking them a question to get it started. And you can ask it, I've asked it about all kinds of things. Do you prefer to eat at home or to eat out? If I've got nothing, if we have zero in common, I will sometimes now go to absolutely off the wall kinds of things. And then it at least gets that conversation, because then I can say, tell me more about, or what did you mean by? I can ask a question then, and it is all about them. I don't need it to be about me. I'm trying to build this bridge with them. And I'm not doing this with everyone that I meet at the grocery store, because I don't need to build a bridge with them. But when it comes to B&I people, when it comes to clients, when it comes to my clients' employees, trying to get a mechanic to talk to me about anything underneath the car while he's working is one of the most challenging experiences. I have nothing in common off the get-go. And then we find out we love donuts. Oh, perfect. Okay, now we got something to go with. What kind of donuts do you like them with the? And we are off and running. And now we have rapport. Now, when something happens or when information needs to be gathered, I can go to him and I can say, hey, here's a donut. What's the skinny on this situation? And he gives me what I need. We part ways. Life is good. So we're able to have that level of connection because it started by building rapport and me meeting him where he was at and finding something besides both of us being humans and breathing that we had in common. All right, so Kaylina, awesome. That's helpful. Great. Do you want any more on that? And you can unmute yourself and speak up if you'd like, because again, this is about you guys taking this to the next level. I heard that in almost every email that came to me is, how do we deepen a relationship? How do we take it from surface to connection? Not necessarily a deep, deep connection, but building that rapport to where there is a little bit more than just that surface. So that's great, Kaylina. Good. And you'll do great at it. Okay, so any other questions, or are you ready to jump in? Was that helpful to anyone else? That scenario? I'm telling you, this is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. There's a lot of basics that go into this. And so along with that, here's where we're going to start. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so we've already mentioned the assessments. I use the DISC, and here's why. It's behavioral. We can observe our behaviors and our communication, and we can observe others' behaviors a whole lot better than trying to get into the psyche of someone. Why are they really doing that? Well, there's reasons why they're doing it, but in order to connect with a person, having something that you can observe easily is a really great place to start. And so it's this behavioral self-awareness. Because it is observable, it's also situational. How many of you have either for yourself or have you recognized it in someone else that in this particular situation, they show up this way, but then you see them over here and they're showing up a little differently? It's because we all put on different hats. We're all playing different roles depending upon who we're with and how it's going. Most of us are a version of what you see is what you get, but depending upon the role that we are in, there's going to be some behavioral change. And when we can recognize when that happens and understand where and when and why that is going on, it allows us to start to connect with them. It's different than personality. Personality is like Myers-Briggs. Personality doesn't change. Your behaviors can change. They can be, you can receive coaching. You can have an experience where you recognize, wow, I am shooting myself in the foot each and every single time that I do that. I need to stop. I need to find a new way. That is not changing your personality at all. That is bringing an awareness to the fact that you're doing something that is not working. It doesn't get you the results you want. It sets off everybody else around you in a negative way. You can change that. You can flex, you can unlearn and then relearn. That's what behavioral awareness allows us to do, is to unlearn and relearn new ways to communicate and sharpen our skills. So we're going to get into the DISC assessment, and it's not because I think that it's the end all be all. There's tons of assessments out there. There's colors, there's animals, there's gyms, but this is really now the shift. Once you have an awareness of yourself and how you show up, then you can start to observe these styles in other people. There's an energy that goes about it. There is each of them have their own sets of needs and fears and desires. They have their own ways of communicating. And when you can observe it and accept it and understand that's just the way they're wired. Now, how can I work best with them? Then you're able to take all of the information that we have gone through and start to apply communication strategies and people skills to these other styles so that you get the conversation to go further, faster, and so that you get to a win-win. It has to start with you. Now we're shifting to not only understanding yourself and which style you think you would be, but also then how do you apply this information to other people? All right, so that's, and I'm watching the clock because again, a lot to cover. So I wanted to split it up about half and half. Before we launch into the styles, are there any questions or is there anything you want to cover before we add to this? Yes, no. Okay, so far so good. All right, so the 4 behavioral styles, at least with the DISC assessment, you can see them here. The D and the I are more outgoing. The C and the S are a little more reserved. Then the D and C are more task focused, while the S and the I are more people focused. The D stands for dominant, the I is influential, the S is steady, and the C is conscientious. You don't have to try to jot down notes on that. We'll go into it a little bit more and you'll see it on different slides. Where all of this came from, and I believe it was the beginning of all of the different style assessments that are out there, was way back in 1929. There was a doctor who was a psychiatrist who started to observe that every single person he encountered had all 4 of these styles, but in most cases, 1 or 2 of them were their primary go-to styles. And as he started to observe all of these different styles, he started to recognize, how do they communicate? What are they focused on? What's their pace like? What's their priority in life? Is it task or is it people? Do they move slower? Do they move faster? What's their thought process? And then it has been added to throughout all of these years. The claim to fame for the man who created the DISC assessment, Dr. Marston, actually came up with the persona of Wonder Woman. And it was because if you think about the persona of Wonder Woman, she's got it all. I mean, if you think about it, she can dance on this little disc graph given any situation she's in. And when you become so self-aware and so comfortable with the strengths that you bring to the table, you too can be like Wonder Woman. You can shift. I know Dan's so excited. We'll get you the costume. You can shift among all of these styles and show up the way the other person needs you to show up, or show up however the situation needs you to show up. That's like serious self-mastery. I don't know if any of us will ever reach that in our lifetime, but that's what self-mastery looks like, is the ability to pull out your strengths within all of these different styles at the right moment, at the right time, in order to get the job done or put the other person at ease. We're going to start where we're at today. The first thing is to really understand how you are wired. So from an actual report, for those of you who have not seen a DISC report or chart, this is what it looks like. And so you can see there is, this person is a combination of all four. They have two styles that are primarily their focus styles. For the DISC assessment anyway, there's a natural style and an adapted style. The adapted is when we put our work hat on and tell the assessment, this is what I see myself as. This is how I observe myself. And then there's a few word groupings at the very end of the report that get into a person's subconscious, and it spits out the natural style, because it appears that all of the words are the exact same on all 6 of the word groupings, and it makes you go a little crazy. And depending upon how you're wired, you get frustrated at it and it spits out the natural. So this is what the actual results will look like. And then let's learn about the styles. So as we go through these, I want you to focus on first you. Identify which styles really resonate with you. In most cases, there will be a combination of 2. Some cases, there's a strong combination of 3. When I see a result, like if we were to go to that back where I see the charts, if a person is pretty much across the board, all 4 of them are almost equal, then they either are at an extremely high level of self-mastery already, which is a very low possibility, or they are not sure how they need to show up in any particular situation. And it's not necessarily a negative or a positive, but it is often a really great opportunity for them to grow and become stronger in who they are. The stronger you are in who you are, the more at ease and the easier it will be to build rapport and develop and use these people skills with the people around you. People like to be around those who are at ease with themselves. Not necessarily the most confident person in the room, but the person who is at ease with themselves. So see if you can identify for yourself which style combination you would be. Okay, so the dominant, directive, they are, I did it. Did I? Oh, I got it kind of mixed up. So here, I'm going to, excuse me for hopping around with my slides, but it'll make more sense this way. All right. So Michael Jordan, anyone not know who Michael Jordan is? Please. I hope all of you do. He is a great example of the dominant style. There is a really, really wonderful documentary even on the Chicago Bulls, I think on Netflix, that really, from my perspective, and of course I live this life all the time, so I'm looking at everything through this behavioral based lens. It showcases how he is the dominant person throughout this documentary, even though it's not about him. But when you look at an NBA team at that level, and this was back when they were winning year after year after year, and then when they parted ways, it shows their practices. It takes you into the locker rooms, and everyone is operating at an elite level, right? So you would think all of them would be dominant. That's not the case. Many of them fell into the steady or the supportive with a high driver ambition, right? So when you look at Michael Jordan, he was the guy who not only pursued excellence for himself, but drove others to pursue excellence. He was never sitting on his butt doing nothing. If he was sitting down, he was thinking through strategy. If you saw him on the court, he commanded, with just his presence, he commanded respect, even if they didn't like him. He held himself to a very high standard. And he challenged others to get to that standard, but he did not hold them to his same standard. He liked to be the one in charge. The focus for the dominant is problems and challenges, which is why if they are sitting quietly, it is because they are trying to figure out the solution to something, and probably 10 things at once. All right, so now we're going to back up. And if you either identify this for yourself or someone near you, then you can, oh, maybe I just jumped a screen. Good grief. I am sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. All right, so if you identify someone around you with a dominant style, if they're directive, then they are most likely these things in the red box. They don't even really have conflict as part of their vocabulary, to be completely honest with you. They see it as an opportunity to solve a problem. So they want you to bring these issues to them. You always know where you stand with them, whether you want to know or not. They may be combative or create unnecessary conflict if they're really, really high with their dominant style. Remember, their need is to solve problems. So if there are no problems, they will create problems. But they aren't problems that the rest of the world sees them as problems. They create problems like, well, I'm going to go start investing in real estate now. Because this one business wasn't enough. It might be happening for some of you on this call. I don't know, but they're looking at it as opportunity while it could be creating conflict for those around them, right? They don't see it that way at all. They're very efficient and effective self-starters. They're challenge oriented, which means if you're trying to really connect with a high D person, get them involved in a challenge, or better yet, I bet you blah, 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 or prove it is always a great phrase to use with them. You're challenging them. And when you do it from a lighthearted way, you will get through very fast. You're speaking their language, even if it is not your own. They're very innovative and they're very visionary. They really are looking for how do we take this world? How do we take something very common and do something new with it? And again, for them, if they're not able to operate with that and to share it, they will feel like they are stuck in a jail cell. So remember that when they are going on and on about this vision, and if you are just the exact opposite, do not start shooting it down right away. Ask them, how do you see this happening? How would you make this happen? They have it planned out. So this is where, when it comes to understanding other people, how do you see that happening? And if you're with a directive style, a dominant style person, yeah, they'll tell you. And it might be really short, or because the dominant style appreciates communication about the things they want to communicate about, they will go on and on and on, and they will paint the picture. It's really cool to watch when you can step back and put aside your own, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to get it done? You tell me, how is this, right? Manage your own self before you start inflicting it on other people. All right, so the part where, so I've shared a lot. Here are some other tips to you. The dominant style, in fact, I have, I was working with a gentleman who was a very strong dominant style. His second was influential. In fact, I think they were pretty neck and neck. And he was headed to a meeting with his attorney and was on the phone with me. And he told me let's say it started at 11 o'clock. It was 11:03. And I was on the phone. I was the one getting nervous about the fact that he was now 3 minutes late to meet with his attorney. And I said something, don't you need to go? It's like your meeting started. He says, this is my meeting. I am paying him. He can wait. Oh, yeah, I guess that's right. But that is verbatim. When you are dealing with someone who is a very strong dominant style, that is their perception. The fact that I even reminded him about the time was a lesson I learned, because I don't need to do that when I am working with a highly dominant person. They are very aware. And if they are taking longer, they know and they want to. So just keep that in mind. Ever since then, I have never, ever reminded a dominant style what time it is. So see, I'm learning as well. Okay, any questions about dominant? Do some of you see a little bit of yourself or a big part of yourself in the dominant style? Make a note of it, because we're moving on to the influential. The focus is people and relationships. This is a terrible picture of Oprah because it's all pixelated and stuff, but Oprah is a great example. Again, anyone not know who Oprah is? I tried to find people that would span generations and were out there enough. If you think about Oprah, think about the words that come to mind. I mean, the woman can move mountains. She's inspiring. She's influential. She has moved at a very fast pace. And I don't know if any of you have studied or looked at how did she get started. She pursued. She is the one who made it happen for herself. She was the one who got into journalism. She just kept saying yes. She was very focused on doing this, the people side of stories. So they gave her her talk show, right? So she very much embodies the fast-paced, people-focused side of that disc wheel. Whereas the dominant is fast-paced, but task-oriented. They need to get things done before they focus on people. Oprah is looking to connect and then get a lot done. You can see it in how her expressions are. So I would imagine Michael Jordan has a decent amount of the influential because of how he shows up. Donald Trump, we're not going to get into politics, but he too is a very high dominant, and you can't always, he's very expression oriented, right? So you can see how these style combinations happen. So if you know that you are working with someone who is more on this influential side, you're going to observe they have a lot of empathy for other people, sometimes to a fault. They'll consider many options before resolving conflict, because while they want it to happen quickly, they're also considering all the people aspects. They sometimes can be overly emotional, overly enthusiastic, but they easily motivate other people just by being around them. They don't even necessarily need to open their mouth or do it intentionally. You often just feel the energy coming off of them. However, they may lack follow through. They're big idea people. They're not so good on the follow through. So here are some ways to work with them, to connect with them, some skills that you can apply when you are dealing with someone who you recognize is a high influential. Give the socializing time a chance to happen. That's how they connect. If it is passed over, then it's nothing but a transaction. If you can get them talking about what is your idea? How do you see this happening? What are your ideas? Make it plural. They have lots of them. Let them talk about that. And then it's up to you, because this is not always something that they do on a regular basis or do intuitively for themselves. They don't assign dates. They just talk about what the idea is and how they want to see it happen. They may not be the person who actually gets it done, and they probably aren't figuring out when they want to have it done. I don't know, it'd be nice to do. Now, the thing to remember, and Kaylina, do not laugh too loudly, and hopefully you're on mute, but when you are working with a person who is an influential person, because of how many ideas they have, there is zero filter between the brain and the mouth. So the ideas just go. And if you are not a person who understands that this is how the influential communicates, this is how they process and how they figure out which option to go with, if you are their opposite, which is the conscientious, you're very detail oriented. And when you hear something come out, you're ready, then that needs to be what we're going with. Always, always, always. If you're dealing with an influential, ask them, are we just brainstorming, or is this like an idea we're running with? They are not, in most cases. Now I am, because I've had to learn this, but I wasn't before. So ideas would come out, and it was actually my husband who at one point was so frustrated with me because I had come up with some ideas, then we had gone to bed, and then the next night after work, we're talking, I'm like, I actually think that this would be a better option. He goes, well, I've already done stuff to make last night's idea happen. Are you kidding me? Now I have to undo all of this, and you've changed your mind again? Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, noted. This is why I love this being behavioral. Clearly, it was not building rapport or connection with him. It was not building up the relationship. So now I have learned, I preface it. I'm just brainstorming. Do not run with any of these ideas that are about to come out of my mouth. Just let me talk, because it's how I process, and it's what needs to happen in order for a decision to be made. And now he can sit back and he just lets it happen. And then we come together from his side and my side, which one is going to make it happen, or how do we make it that's happen? So you can, again, these can be extremely complementary, but you've got to do this for an influential person if they do not have that level of self-awareness to simply say, I'm brainstorming. Ask them, are you ready to move forward with any of these ideas yet? No, I need more time to think about them. Cool. Fantastic. Again, when you're looking to develop the relationship, these are the skills that make the difference. Asking them. Yes, Mary.
So if you're working with a small team and you're the influencer, and what they're saying perks those ideas in your head, and pretty soon they're coming out your mouth, and they're not the influencer type, they're not ready to, I've experienced, they're not ready to receive those ideas. So do you not put them ideas out there? Or, I mean, I can understand clarifying, but then they kind of take it in a whole nother direction when you start brainstorming out loud and they're not that type of person.
Yeah, right. You're shooting yourself in the foot. So it doesn't mean that you cannot brainstorm, but it means that you get to apply some discipline to your idea session. So in the moment is really hard for the S's and the C's of the world. And if you have done a good job of building a team with people who can complement your style, then you have a lot of the steady and conscientious on your team, or you have at least one or two of them, because you need them in order to do what it is to fulfill the ideas that you have. So if you are the influencer and you're leading your team, it requires discipline, because if you just start throwing it out there, they're going to respond the way my husband did. And it's defeating your ability to create credibility with them, because they think you're flaky. They think you can't stick with an idea. And so the respect for you will start to diminish. Now, if you have ideas as they're talking, write them down. Go to another trusted resource. Hey, my team met today. While they were talking, I got all kinds of ideas. I need to process them. And then you do that with someone else. And because if you're the leader, you're looking at things very differently. You're looking at a different level of these ideas than what they will. And you know what I am and what I am not going to say yes to when it comes time for business. Okay. So you have a different filter that you're running these ideas through. And so still consider all the ideas, but do not do it there in that room. What you do is you go away with all your ideas and you either process it yourself or talk it through with somebody else. And then you come back to your team and you say, okay, that was a really good meeting we had yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it is. And I've been thinking about all of the input, and I have an idea why I want to run past you and get your thoughts on it from your own perspective, from your own role, to see how it would play out and whether it's a solid idea to run with. Here's the idea. What I want you to think about are the pros and cons from your respective role. And we're going to meet tomorrow morning at 9 to share what the pros and cons are. Now, if you have a good team that has good camaraderie with one another, you can do this in a team environment. Otherwise, do it individually, because sometimes your team, they don't think the person across the table is going to be able to do their part, or they might be the problem. So you know your team best. This can be either done collectively, or if that needs to be developed, you can do it individually. I'm going to start meetings with each of you. They're going to last 15 minutes at 9 o'clock. You and I will go at 9, then we'll start at 9:20, then we'll start at right? And you get their ideas individually.
Okay.
And then that gives them the opportunity to, number one, develop credibility that their leader can actually put a thought together. But number two, you're asking them to think about it from their perspective and then bring their thoughts to you, because the conscientious do not want to be wrong. So you're giving them the opportunity to think through their thoughts and write it down, rather than trying to just pressure them to think on their feet, because they don't. So you're not going to get the best information from them. Plus, they're going to feel very, very pressured, like they're going to say the wrong thing. And they don't want to say the wrong thing. So is that helpful?
Very, very insightful. And I can visualize that happening in groups that I've been in.
Great. Oh, yeah.
Especially when you have a lot of fairly dominant people in there, and then you're running with all these ideas, like, yeah, then you have to be careful. That was very helpful.
Yeah, you absolutely have to be careful, because those of us who appreciate the ideas and the brainstorming totally get it. It drives the other 3 styles crazy for different reasons. And it certainly is not building up, and in any way. you got to really circle the wagons back around to regain the respect. So good. I'm glad it was helpful. Any other questions at this point? All right. So now the steady. I hope you all know Tom Hanks. I really need to get better pictures. Good grief. Do you all know Tom Hanks? Any of you don't? He's a really cool guy. He's clearly got a lot of influential, right? We can see it in his comedy. We can see it in his facial expressions, but he is a really good definition of the steady, supportive, stable person. So even though the humor comes out, which a lot of people just instinctively think that's an I, that's influential, it is not. Some of the best dry humor comes from the accountants of the world, and they are very, very clear, conscientious style people. So humor can show up in a lot of different ways, right? So when it comes to the steady style, they are searching and doing everything that they possibly can to be a steady paced, creating a steady paced environment. They are the duck who looks like they're gliding across the top of the water and their feet are running 1,000,000 miles a minute. But no one would know unless you look underneath the surface. For someone who has a very high steady style, that is a really great depiction of what is happening internally in them. So they are looking to make anything and everything as stable and steady as possible, which means when they're paired up with the fast-paced, dominant, or influential styles, you can imagine the level of internal conflict they have. So if you find that you are with this person, now these people, before I move into the next slide, these people you definitely want to have on your team, regardless of what kind of team it is. They're the finishers. They're the ones who come behind the dominant, who has all these visions, and the steady style just comes along behind them and says, okay, we got this. I got it. I'll get it. Okay. Because they are, for better or worse, they're the people pleasers of the world. They want to make everyone happy, and they are loyal golden retrievers. They will be by your side no matter what happens. And they're usually fairly positive about it. They don't see it as a negative. So if you recognize the steady style or in yourself or someone else, here is what you can do. So again, the steady style was down there on the people focused part of that wheel with the influential. So that's what they're looking for. They're not looking to move the ball forward. They're not looking to get stuff done. They are ducks herding cats. That's awesome. Thank you for that, Dan. That's even better. Oh, I did it again. Okay, so I'm going to use that. Can I steal that from you? Yeah, it's going to be that. It's that difficult for a duck to herd cats, right? They often mediate the conflict because they hate it. They hate what conflict does. And they see almost everything as conflict. So when you are working with an S, you need to really ease into the conversations where solutions need to happen. Instead of just hitting it directly and saying, we need to find a solution for this. They right there see it as conflict, and it like shuts off their brain to do anything collaborative. Whereas if you can break the ice, you talk with them about the people side of life, what are they doing, on the weekends. Now there is a limit. You do not, especially in a work environment, you do not have to stay in that place the entire time, but it's how they connect. They connect by knowing there's more to life than business. So break the ice with them and ease them into a business type of conversation by connecting with them as a person first. Acknowledge them as a person first. Then say, I could really use your help with something. Remember, they want to help. They are the helpers of the world. For the influential and the dominant, they don't want to help. Don't ask them for their help. Even if they're helpers by nature, they don't want to help. They have enough going on, especially the dominant. But if you can say to a steady style person, I could really use your help with something. How do you think they're going to respond? Yeah, absolutely. What do you need? Well, I've noticed that the last few times that we've had this situation, it's just not hitting the mark. We're not able to get the result that we're looking for. And I think we could do it a little better, but I'm not sure exactly how to go about it. But I know I need your help with this. And then you just start the conversation that way. And then as you develop that rapport with them, you can pretty much go back into your own style with, at that point, they'll either ask for more clarity, or you can be more clear and a little more direct with them, and it won't be offensive to them. But if you lead with it, it will be very offensive and it creates conflict. And their whole purpose in life is to avoid conflict. If you go to the dominants and the influential and ask for their help, like I said, they're going to be like, I have enough on my plate. And they'll use that actual phrase if you haven't already heard it. But if you go to them and say, yeah, I cannot figure this out. You think you could? No, I won't. I bet not. No, what is it? What are you trying to how can I help? What are you trying to figure out? So again, knowing how to speak to the different styles when you're wanting to get their involvement in something, you just have to know how to open that conversation. And again, it's not about you. It's checking your own style at the door and knowing how to approach them with what their style is. The steady style really likes it when you listen to them, and the best way to show that you're listening to them is to ask them about something that they just said. Oh yeah, we went hiking over the weekend. It was a good time. Really? Where did you go hiking? Oh, tell me about that. Let them talk for a few minutes, because a few minutes at the beginning of the conversation will buy you so much on the back end of the conversation. That's where the collaborative conversations and the win-win and the deepening of the relationship and the understanding happens. It really starts with just those few minutes at most at the beginning. And then you switch it into the rest of the conversation. All right, any questions about supportive style? All right, the conscientious or the compliant. Colin Powell is a very good example of this style. And even in his demeanor, can't you just tell? He's a very calm, collected, conscientious kind of guy. You can just tell by looking at him. If I put Oprah back up here, I wouldn't really say that about her. Not that she doesn't have part of it, but it's not her primary style. Their focus is on procedures and rules, details, tasks. One of the reasons he was so effective is because he looked at the procedures and the rules and the policies first, and then brought in the people aspect. So he appreciated the ripple effect it would have with people. But he first looked at it from the procedures and rules and policies standpoint. When you have a conscientious person around you, recognize that that is the lens they are looking through. And in a lot of cases, they're paired up with the influential, because if you remember that disc wheel, they're opposites of each other. You need to be paired up with your opposite in many different situations and many different roles. A lot of times marriages are made with opposites attract. Well, it can either be recognized as a compliment to each other when it's understood and appreciated, or the differences finally get to the point where it breaks the camel's back. When you can recognize what they are bringing to the table, especially if you are from the opposite standpoint and you really don't have an appreciation for rules, procedures, tasks, details, because trust me, there are people like that who exist. Again, it is checking your own style at the door, setting them up for success. Hey, I would really like to get your take on this because I know I'm missing some things. Here is what we are looking at. And you are so good at figuring out what is missing. Can you take a look at it? Bring your ideas back. I don't know, would tomorrow at 3, does that give you enough time? Remember, they are very afraid of being wrong, but you also then have to give them a deadline. Otherwise, they will continue to research, rules, until the cows come home. But if you set some parameters around it and you appreciate their style and what they bring to the table, and that you do need that from them, because imagine if you have the high influential style, it takes a lot of energy to get into the headspace to look at a document and find a lot of details that are missing. That takes a tremendous amount of energy, to where if you have someone on your team who you can say, you know what, I know I'm going to miss some stuff and I know that I have, but this is like where you shine. This is your forte. I really could use your help. And then it's just identifying how much time do they need to do it. So most of us do know some conscientious. So if you do, then recognize that they are these things in the blue. They can sometimes come across and fool people as the dominant style. And it's because they ignore feelings most of the time. So, and that's where people think the dominant do also, where the dominant don't necessarily ignore feelings, but they really just don't have time for them. They're moving at too fast of a pace. And they fully expect the other person to take care of their own feelings, but they're not the ones who need to take care of their own feelings. The compliant style, the conscientious style, just is clueless. They're like unaware that feelings are even out there, and it makes them really uncomfortable. They don't want to understand it. They don't want to see it. They just don't have an awareness around it. And that's just the way that it is. So again, trying to get them to understand your feeling, go to somebody else. Do not request or require that from a conscientious person. The other thing is that they have very high standards, and this is what occasionally gets people tripped up between the conscientious and dominant styles. They both have very high standards. The difference, though, if you remember when I said about the dominant style, they have high standards for themselves. And if others grow to that standard, that's cool. but they just want them to do the job. They just want them. It's fine. I handle yourself. I got me, and I'm putting myself at a very high standard. But with the conscientious style, they not only have very high standards for themselves, but they expect others to meet those high standards. And they get very frustrated, or they can get very frustrated if others are not meeting the standard that they have set out. And the higher the conscientious, the more prevalent this is. And it's really difficult for them to develop an understanding that the rest of the world, they're like incapable of meeting that standard that they have for themselves. So it can become a little frustrating for the rest of us who say, I can never live up to your standard. Saying that to them is like at the point of frustration. But when you are able to attempt, which is what the other side, so here's what you do your homework in advance. You come prepared. You do not try to engage them in a personal conversation. You come with detailed information, and you directly right to the point. So if you are the steady style, communicating with the conscientious, and in order for you to feel connected with a person is to connect on a personal level, you've got to check that at the door and not take it personally, but you got to meet them where they're at, the conscientious. So you've got to go in, thank you for your time. Here's what I need covered. And if you have it written out in a bullet point fashion, they will love you even more. But that's an emotion, so be careful, because they really don't emote. So if you can go in with that bullet point, you can get directly to the point and not take it personally that you're not connected with them. There's this funny thing that happens. After you get the tasks done, then they often surprise people by finishing the conversation with, oh, hey, didn't you go on that hike this weekend? So it's not that they don't want to connect personally. Well, they really don't, but it's not that they won't, but it's that they need to address the task first. So they want you to get to it right away, and they want it to be detailed. So leave out the fluff, go in with facts, tell them specifically what you need from them. And then if they engage in, oh yeah, weren't you going to go hiking this weekend? How was that? Just simply thank them and walk out the door, and they will think that you are fantastic. Because then when time comes, and I have had conscientious people, I have a client who's an attorney, very conscientious, especially when she's in attorney mode and not owner mode. We do not schedule our sessions until towards the end of the day. And it is because she gets to the office, she has to get to work. Like, it is an absolute must for her sanity. Get to work, knock out a lot and as much as she possibly can, and then get on the phone with Kelly. Because our conversations are when she's in owner mode. I don't know anything about being an attorney. I can't help her with that at all. She has to be in the right mental space. And we have learned not to meet at 9 o'clock, which is when we first started working together, we would meet first thing in the morning. She was scattered. She was all over the place. It was so unproductive for coaching. We shifted it to the end of the day, and now it's amazing. So keep that in mind when you recognize you're dealing with someone who is very conscientious minded. All right, any questions at all about any of the styles or specific situations? Because we are about to wrap up. All right, I hope you know this answer already, but it's a reminder. One style is not better than the other. And you can recognize that with somebody else and give them that leeway that your style is not the approach that needs to be taken and vice versa. That's when you can start to really build that rapport, deepen the relationship, deepen the connection, because it will be a relationship that is at ease. And the more at ease it is, the more connected, the more rapport, the better the relationship will be. So finally, identify your own combination of style, and then think about those you have around you and what would their style be. Apply the platinum rule with the tips and tricks we went through. If you want your own disc report, let me know. And then remember to record your CEUs on the BNI side of things. So I do not have to run. I've got just a few minutes of time if any of you have questions. Otherwise, thank you so much. I feel like the time flew by. I packed it as full as I possibly could. So thank you. Thank you. And you're welcome. Was this helpful?
Very much.
Good. Good.
Yes, thank you very much, Kelly.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. This is like the tip of the iceberg, what we went through, but the awareness of yourself and your own style, and then starting to observe others and apply some of these things. And so would it be helpful if I emailed this to you? Okay.
Yeah, you give me something else to feed off of, because I'm trying to be a supervisor, and just being able to know, to have something to go back on, to be able to talk to my other coworkers would be amazingly helpful.
Oh, absolutely. So I'll email this out to you. If for some reason you don't get it, just hit me up. But that way you have the cheat sheets. That's what I call them, cheat sheets. So if you have any other questions, get in touch with me. This is what I do. I love to do it. And if it builds better relationships, then that's what I'm all about. I could quiz you on what you think my style combination is. Some of you would nail it, I'm sure. All right. Well, thank you all very much. Have a great rest of your day. And tell your chapters this is great. We're doing an in-person one on the 16th. So even if you want a reminder, come back and see me at the library on the 16th. But let your chapters know it was actually decent. She did okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
I had a few questions. If you
Oh,
want me to
I will
grab-
stick around. Absolutely.
Sorry. Do you mind unsharing the screen?
I am trying to. There we go. I'm telling you what, I don't know what it is. It's like my mouse has a mind of its own. Okay.
I was writing them down as they came, but so as a very obvious I myself, how do you deal with, like it said in the description that there's a certain level of resentment that comes with constantly sacrificing. So with all of this and learning and leaving everything at the door, and then always all day be like, okay, this type, and always changing yourself. How do you recharge yourself for that at the end of the day and not just be full of resentment? Like, why don't people do that for me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's such a good question. Without going down the rabbit hole. And I've been doing this not only for myself, but with others for years and years and years. So it's coming from experience. It really is identifying what recharges you and then taking responsibility to put those into your day and controlling that, because to look for somebody else to fill that or to recharge you is setting yourself up for disaster. So I would say come up with a list of things that recharge you, accept that it is your responsibility to do it for yourself and to not look for other people to do it, and see if that makes a difference.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Like the little things you've said about like get coffee on your way.
That's right. And then the other thing that I remind people, especially if, I mean, there's the givers and the takers of the world. And we all have to deal with the takers because we live in a world where they exist. But do your best to fill your world with the givers. And when you can fill your world with the givers who are building you up, that's fantastic, because that could be part of what recharges you is your community. But again, be very careful. Do not look to them to fill the need of recharging, because then all you're doing is transferring it to another person. And what happens when they go away? Now, all of this is left, and you're, oh, you're not resentful, but you're wondering, oh no, what am I going to do now? Right? So remember that. And so find the ways to recharge yourself, take the responsibility for it, because the thing about it is that the givers of the world want to be around other people who can recharge themselves. Otherwise, you're the taker.
Mhm.
And they can spot it. They may not be able to identify it, but there will be some kind of wonky energy that they start to feel.
Yeah.
But if you can do that for yourself, and then you find those people, then, I mean, sky's the limit. Like, it's amazing what those kind of connections are.
Mhm. Okay.
So is that helpful?
Yes, it is. And second question, in again, all of the understanding and checking at the door, how do you, well, I don't know how to actually ask this question, but like in terms of feeling like it's manipulative, I
Oh.
guess, in like changing yourself for every person that comes in, how do you maintain authenticity?
This is a question a lot of people ask when they're at the beginning of learning about applying the discs, the styles, whether it's disc or just applying the styles. It is not manipulation at all. It is appreciation. And when you change your perspective from what the world thinks is manipulation, which is negative, to appreciation, which is positive, because you're seeing them for who they are. And then you're meeting them where they're at. And you're staying open to whatever it is that they come to the table with. So if you're trying to manipulate them into your way of doing something, that's not cool. No one wants to have that happen. But if you're really coming at it from a collaborative standpoint, and you're appreciating what they bring to the table, and you don't have a preset agenda, then the manipulation is off the table. All you're doing is recognizing they need me to be really direct in order for us to have a successful conversation. Cool. I'll make my bullet point list before I go in. Great. I don't want to waste time either. It's appreciating it. But if you go in there thinking, I really need to get them to buy this. Oh, I wonder how I can do that. Well, maybe I can. It'll come across fake. They'll feel it, and you won't get anywhere. But if you come at it from, I wonder which one they're going to buy. I think these could be some really good options. So I know she's in a sales position. That's why I'm using this for those of you listening in. If it happens to be in that kind of a scenario, they're not going to feel like you're manipulating the situation at all. You're appreciating the style that they are. So you're delivering the information in a way that they are going to receive it best. And then you're going to let them know, I've come up with a few ideas. I don't know if they'll be the right ideas, but from what you have told me, these 3 things I think would fit best. Unless you have a 4th idea. or want to do this a la carte.
Mhm.
And that's where you are taking your knowledge of that sales conversation, right? Of that relationship with them, of what you have learned throughout the whole process. And you're presenting them with what you do believe would be a great option, but you're delivering it in a way that they are going to receive it best. So you're not manipulating them into anything. You're delivering it in a way they're going to receive best. Imagine being on the receiving end of that. I mean, it is excruciating for me to sit down with a person who is very C oriented and they think I need to go through every line on a contract when I'm just selling them. I get it. Where do I sign? Right?
Yeah.
By the end of it, there was one time it was so bad, I almost called off the deal because he was delivering it in the way that he needed it for himself. And I was looking at my clock wondering, when do we finish? Oh my gosh, this is killing me right now. And I knew I'd heard it. I was going to hurt his feelings if I just spoke up and said, dude, just show me where to sign. But imagine if he would have come in and said, I know I've got this contract. I know you've gone through this before. Is there anything specific you want me to cover? Or here are the highlights, like here's the table of contents, right? Anything we need to go into detail about? Nope. Here's where you sign. Fantastic. I'll be back next time.
Yeah.
And I'd be out the door. I would be happy customer. Was that manipulative at all? So manipulation is not part of this unless you truly are trying to get them to do your thing.
Mhm.
If you are not, if you are just recognizing who you're dealing with and deliver the information in a way they're going to appreciate it, job's done.
Yeah.
You're creating happy, happy customers or happy, happy people around you. And that's the thing. If they never reciprocate, because a lot of people they just don't. That's where your first question is so important. You have to take charge of the recharge.
Mhm.
You have to have, so when I learned this for myself, my phrase for about 2 years straight was radical responsibility. And it was painful because at that point, I always thought it was external stuff that would recharge me. And that always is a recipe for disaster. So when I recognized this for myself, radical responsibility was my phrase for about 2 years straight. And it was not pleasant most of the time. But now, people like, stuff happens all the time. And it occasionally gets to me because I have not been recharging. But it is my first go-to. That's always what I go back to. Oh, it's because I have been taking care of everything and everyone around me. Well, I need to do something different about that. Hey, somebody else is in charge of dinner tonight. I don't care if we have chips and cereal. But I need to go take a bath.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But not being resentful.
Mhm.
Recognizing that's what I need to do. And everybody, believe it or not, everyone else is going to be okay with it. Because you're not putting it off on them. I'm mad at you because you have needed these things from me. It's, hey, I'm kind of run down. I need to go take a bath. You guys good with getting whatever you need to for dinner? Yep. Peace out.
Awesome.
Right? So
Last question is, how many CEUs does it count for?
2.
2. Great, cool. Awesome. Well, I'm totally going to use this in like 20 minutes when I have an ordering session. So I'm going to go. Thank you
Good.
so much, Kelly.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Good to
Thanks.
see you.
You too.
All right. Oh, you're muted. I can't hear you.
I just said thank you so much. It was very interesting, and it just I appreciated like how to manage each one, those were the most helpful pieces for me, I felt like.
Good.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to hear that and good to meet you. I don't think we've met before.
Yeah, I'm brand new to BNI. Last week I was initiated, so
Ah, congratulations. Well,
thank
now
you.
you know the kinds of trainings that I put on. They're all business oriented. So
Yeah,
hope to see
great.
you in additional ones.
Yes, I will look for them. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Have a good day, Heather.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.